Let's go ahead and split up markup of the playlist page into multiple components. So in here, we can create separate component for this sidebar, as well as for the main content. The main content in here, as you can see, is just this list of cards. As a reminder, the component which renders this playlist page is called playlists. Let's open up this component in the editor. And by the way, besides those two components, we can also move the markup of the heading as well as subheading of this page into a separate component as well. So I'm gonna start with creating this component. Let's cut the markup of the heading and subheading and use component called app-page-header in here. As always, I'm going to create new file for this component inside the components folder with the same name and paste in here the markup that we have just cut. As you may remember, there is also a similar component called app-section-header. Let's open up this component. In here, as you can see, we have prop declaration for heading and subheading props. Same props we're going to need for app-page-header component. So I'm basically going to copy this declaration block and paste it into app-page-header component. And then let's get back to playlist page where we're using this app-page-header component and pass required props such as heading and subheading. Then let's also use proper values for those fields. And before checking the result in the browser, I'm going to interpolate those props in proper places of app-page-header component. Here we should show the heading, and down here the subheading will be shown. Alright, on the page everything is looking good, and in Vue DevTools in the component tree we're seeing the new component called app-page-header with props that we have just passed from outside. And now let's move on to other two components, this sidebar and the main content of this page. Let's open up playlist component. Here we have two big sections. The first one represents the sidebar with filters, and the second one will be list of cards. So first of all, I'm going to cut the markup of filters and use playlist filters component in this place. Let's create file for this new component with the name playlist filters, and as always paste markup of this component in here. The same thing we're going to do with the main content of this page. Down here we have list of cards. I'm going to extract this markup and use playlist grid component instead. So we'll create this component in the components folder right now and paste markup that we have just cut. So far everything is looking good in a browser, as you can see. We can even split up markup of the sidebar by several other components. For example, we can extract the markup of the list with text into separate component, as well as markup of individual list item. So let's do it. First of all, I'm going to extract this unordered list, which represents list of text, into a separate component with the name tag list. I'm creating a new file for this component within components folder and paste markup of this component. And then we're going to do the same but for individual list item. I will cut individual list item and use component with the name tag list item. As always, we'll create new file for this component with the same name and paste the markup of individual list item in here. Every list item is going to show different text, so we'll have to accept it from outside. I'm going to use slot component to be able to pass the content for this component in between opening and closing component tags right here. Before rendering all other individual list item components, let's just make sure that the first component looks good in a browser. And now we can go ahead and create an array which is going to store the list of text, which is why I'm going to add a script section in here and add declaration for the text array. I have basically gathered content of all list items in this array, so now we can go ahead and use v-for directive on this component just to be able to render this component several times. for each tag. So here we're getting text of each tag into tag variable that will be unique, so we can use this variable as a value for the key attribute. And then we'll also pass these tags in between component tags. And just like that, we have fully rendered list of tags on a page. In the Vue DevTools, you can also see that each element of this list is represented by a separate component called tag list item. Link to the source code of this project will be in the video description.